Welcome back to the Global Missions Health Conference here in Louisville, Kentucky, hosted by Southeast Christian Church. As I mentioned earlier, this is one of the world's largest medical missions conferences. There are people from all walks of life, doctors, dentists, nurses, PAs, pastors, church leaders, you name it, they're all here. The purpose of this video, and I'm here with my good friend, Pastor Frank Bukachi, with Hope Alive Initiatives, and he'll be telling you more about that in a moment. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to give everybody that's watching, whether you're live now or whether you're going to watch this at some point in the future, a perspective of missions being done a different way. This new movement to empower and equip the indigenous church so that they can reach their own people, both physically as well as spiritually. But without going any further, Pastor Frank, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Very excited for you to share with us. But why don't you tell us where you're from and the ministry that you're a part of?
My name is Francis Bukachi. I am from Kenya. I work with a ministry called Hope Alive Initiatives. We focus on training churches in poor and vulnerable communities to be able to help them to reach their own people. Currently, we work in Burkina Faso, in Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, and Mozambique. We have been involved in this ministry for the last 8 years, and it has been interesting to see how churches pick up this new model of doing missions and be able to run with it.
So you've been working in multiple countries. Why don't you tell us how you got started? You know, a lot of times when the church here in North America talks about missions, we think about somebody from the U.S. going to another country. But this was a little bit unique in that you had been doing missions, but with Hope Alive, you went from Kenya. Why don't you tell us where you went from Kenya and how long you were there and what you did as far as the day-to-day ministry?
My journey in ministry began in early 90s. We were working among an unreached people group in northeastern Kenya and in the Horn of Africa. And at that time, we were pioneer missionaries. Basically, we went in, learned the language, and reached out to the people. We did that for 10 years. However, in 2005, we had a change when a friend of ours challenged us to go back to the same people group, but with a different strategy. Instead of going to do the work ourselves, we were supposed to go and look for believers and train them to be able to reach people. Then in 2010, the Lord called us to go to Ghana to work with churches in northern Ghana, training them to be able to reach their own people. And that was interesting because we became more effective than the first 10 years were in missions.
And then from that time, when you started Hope Alive, you went to a country in West Africa, which is a new experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
The Lord called us to Ghana, and when we went there, we did want to learn the language, which was interesting because all of the leaders expected us to learn the language. We told them, no, we feel the best way to do is to train them because they know the language, they know the culture, they can be able to reach their own people. So we designed a program where over 3 years we trained them to effectively carry out the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, and the Great Concern, so that they as a church can have a role in the Great Commission.
So you have partnered over the course of time with groups like ITAC, with groups like Empower Approach, and others that are not going over and doing things for you, but tell us how those partnerships have worked.
Before a team comes in, what we do is we train the church for 1 year. The church has to understand their responsibility to reach out to their own people. There is no way, or we don't have enough laborers to go everywhere, but we can help to empower the churches in their poor communities or their districts or remote areas to be able to reach their own people using their own resources, using their own language. You know, we don't have to learn a language. So these teams come in when the churches are ready to be trained with skills or knowledge they will need to be more effective to reach their own people. So we believe that this partnership helps to give impact to these churches that thought they could never reach out, but now they're able to reach out to their own people.
one of the things that we see and hear from churches around the country, they go through the series, The Missions Dilemma, and then after going through the Missions Dilemma, they say, okay, well, we see how we've been doing it wrong, so instead of doing anything, we're just going to do nothing, because they're so afraid of doing something wrong that they say, well, we'll just send money or we'll just not be involved. So from your perspective, being a Kenyan missionary to multiple countries in Africa, what are some innovative ways that we as a church here in North America can partner with you and the church in other parts of the world?
First of all, I would like to say the Great Commission is a responsibility for the whole church. So I believe in partnership because there are things the Lord has blessed with the church in Africa which the church can contribute. The church in the West, normally they are gifted in skills or knowledge. They can empower the other churches to be able to contribute. A good example is many churches in Africa growing very fast. So we have a challenge of leadership training, discipleship making, but we don't have enough people who can go there and train them. So we feel that the churches coming from North America can go in and empower these new believers with pastors who have never been to Bible school to be able to be effective to reach out. So everyone has a role to contribute, but we should never ignore these churches because they're in a different continent or they're poor. Even the poor churches are expected to contribute disciples. So
this kind of sounds like some topics in the missions dilemma that, like, all parts need all parts. The mission call that we've been given isn't just for the church in North America. It's not just for the church in Africa. It's for the church everywhere, anywhere the church is. Also, think family. You know, there are some really good things that the church in North America, we're really good at. But a lot of times it's our natural tendency to discount what the church in other parts of the world can contribute. The church in Africa, I know this from experience, being there many, many times, the church in Africa is very hospitable. But just because they are hospitable doesn't mean that that's the only strength that they have. And the North American church is very dominant. So one of the things that we've talked about many times is when we go as the North American church, even just to spend some time with Hope Alive or other ministries, what we need to do is we need to just listen. Not talk, just listen. Because as you've already heard from Pastor Frank, when Pastor Frank speaks, we listen. Because the things that come out of his mouth, the things that the Holy Spirit gives him to say, are powerful words that we need to hear. But one of the real strengths that I've seen in you, Pastor Frank, is that talking about and empowering the African church so that we're not, as a North American church, creating dependency, but the African church has a lot to contribute as well. And so tell us a little bit about some innovative ways that we can keep from creating dependency, because we go and we see a lot of ways that the resources that we've been blessed with could benefit the church in Africa or other parts of the world. But we also know that from the receiver's point of view, that really doesn't a lot of times help. It actually hurts. So what are some innovative ways that we as the North American church can keep from creating dependency?
Okay, I will start by giving an example. One of the things that troubles me in missions is when people go around saying that there are particular people all over the world who live on $1 per day. I always say it doesn't make sense, because you can't evaluate people just in financial terms. I know communities where people don't have cash money, but they have a farm, they have cows, they have fields. So what we need to do is to go and build their capacity to be able to provide for their needs on a long-term basis so that they sustain their families and sustain their ministries. So one of the things we try to teach churches before teams coming is we do an evaluation with them. What do they have? What do they have in their hands? The way the Lord asked Moses. What do they have in their house? the way Elijah and Elisha asked the widows. Jesus asked the disciples, what do they have? Because they have to recognize what the Lord has given them and see how God can use it through training and empowerment to be able to reach people. No one has nothing. Jesus taught those who say that they don't have anything, take away what they have and give those who have. So I always tell people, you can't just go to people because they don't have anything. They have something. Find out what they have. Like some of these churches have young people, high school guys, who can be available to reach their own people, but they just need to be trained. And we have the teams coming from the West that can come and train in discipleship, train in leadership, give skills like what we do with iTech in dental, community dental work, community medical work, so that these churches are empowered to reach people. They already have something, you just need to build on it. So I don't believe the principle that people have nothing. It doesn't make sense to me. We need to honor what they have. They need dignity. People need to know that God can use them without depending on someone else to pay their bills on a daily basis. Because then it becomes very difficult for them to carry forward the work of God in their context with their own resources.
Well, there you heard it right from Pastor Frank's mouth. Find out what they have. Find out how we can help to create capacity so that they can continue the work. Sounds a lot like training and equipping the church, where the church is, so they can reach out into their community and help their own people. Well, Pastor Frank, there's a lot of people watching, if not now, then who will be watching this. Why don't you just tell us how, if they want to find out more information about Hope Alive initiatives, how can they do that? Hope Alive can be found at our website, www.hopealiveinitiatives.org. You'll find our contacts, someone you can contact to be able to find out more details from us. So there you heard it. It's hopealiveinitiatives.org, hopealiveinitiatives.org. Thank you for joining us for this session here at the Global Missions Health Conference in Louisville, Kentucky, hosted by Southeast Christian Church. This has been a few minutes with Pastor Frank Bukachi of Hope Alive Initiatives. Our prayer and our hope for you is that when you watch this, whether you're watching now or you will watch this one time, is that you will be challenged on a new way to do missions, to empower the church where it exists so that they can be better equipped to meet their own people with the gospel. Thanks for joining us. This has been Jamie Saint with Frank Bukachi. And we'll see you again shortly after 2 o'clock.